Look, I'm going to be straight with you. Everything NASA's been telling you about going back to the moon, the whole for all mankind thing, the scientific discovery, the inspiring future generations speech, it's PR. Beautiful, well-crafted, taxpayer-funded PR. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying they're not telling you the whole story, because the real reason we're dropping over $93 billion on the Artemis program, your money, by the way, has less to do with exploring the cosmos and everything to do with cold, hard power. Think about it. We haven't been back to the moon in over 50 years. Suddenly, we're in a massive hurry. Suddenly, it's a top priority. Suddenly, Democrats and Republicans, who can't agree on literally anything, are both throwing money at this? Yeah. Something else is going on, and what's going on is basically the plot of every space thriller you've ever watched, except it's real, it's happening right now, and most Americans have no clue what's actually at stake. So buckle up, because once you see what's really going on up there, you can't unsee it. Chapter 1. The Thing Nobody's Talking About. All right, December 2020. Middle of the pandemic, everyone's doom scrolling, trying to figure out if they can see their families for Christmas. And while we were all distracted, China did something that should have made front-page news everywhere. They landed a probe on the moon, scooped up rocks, and brought them back to Earth. First time that's been done in over 40 years. American reaction? Crickets. Most people didn't even hear about it. But in Washington? In the Pentagon? In NASA headquarters? Absolute panic mode. Because here's what China's been doing while we've been arguing about everything under the sun. They've landed on the far side of the moon, something we've never done. They've got detailed plans for a permanent lunar base by 2028. Not maybe someday, not aspirational goals, actual timelines, actual funding, actual hardware being built right now. And they're not going alone. Russia signed on. Venezuela's involved. The United Arab Emirates is in. They're building what they call the International Lunar Research Station. And notice what's missing from that name. Yeah, America. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You know how every NASA press conference is all diplomatic, all space is for everyone, all kumbaya? Behind closed doors, it's a completely different conversation. A Space Force general, and yes, we have a Space Force now, that's not a joke anymore, testified to Congress last year. Direct quote, "Whoever gets to the moon first and establishes the rules will have an insurmountable advantage. Not scientific advantage, not exploration advantage, strategic advantage." Translation? If China builds the first permanent moon base, they get to decide how everything works up there. They set the standards. They control the infrastructure. They determine who gets to land where, who gets access to resources, who gets to operate in lunar orbit. Imagine if another country controlled all the shipping lanes in the Pacific, all the GPS satellites, all the undersea internet cables. You wouldn't just be concerned. You'd consider it a direct threat to national security. That's what the moon is becoming. And right now, China's winning. Chapter 2. There's literal gold up there. Well, better than gold. Okay, pop quiz. What's the most valuable substance on the moon? If you said moon rocks or that helium-3 stuff I vaguely remember from a documentary, you're close, but not quite there. It's water. Frozen water in craters that haven't seen sunlight in billions of years. I know. Water? Really? We've got oceans full of it down here. Who cares about moon water? Well, Jeff Bezos cares. Elon Musk cares. Every major aerospace company on the planet cares. And once you understand why, you'll realize we're looking at the biggest gold rush in human history. Here's the deal. Water on the moon isn't just water. It's rocket fuel. You can split H2O into hydrogen and oxygen. Boom! You've got propellant, which means the moon becomes a gas station in space. Right now, getting stuff off Earth costs about $10,000 per pound. Want to go to Mars? You need fuel. Want to mine asteroids? You need fuel. Want to build space hotels, satellite repair stations, or literally anything in space? You need fuel. And hauling all that fuel up from Earth's gravity well is what makes space so stupidly expensive. But if you can refuel on the moon, game changer. The economics of space go from insanely expensive to actually viable business model. We're not talking millions here. Morgan Stanley put out a report estimating the space economy could hit $1 trillion by 2040. Goldman Sachs said asteroid mining alone could produce the world's first trillionaire, and all of it depends on lunar infrastructure. Now here's the kicker. The Outer Space Treaty from 1967 says no country can own the moon. Can't claim it, can't put a flag down and call it yours. But, and this is a big but, it doesn't say anything specific about commercial mining. That loophole is big enough to drive a lunar rover through. So what's happening? America's positioning itself to be first. Not because we love space exploration, we do, but that's not the point. But because being first means we get to write the rules. We decide what's legal. We set the precedents. We establish the claims. China knows this. That's why they're moving fast. This isn't some abstract future scenario. Chinese companies are already developing lunar mining technology. Their government is already planning resource extraction missions. Whoever gets there first doesn't just get a head start, they might get the whole game.
Chapter 3. The military stuff they don't want to say out loud.
Alright, this is where things get real, and it's the part NASA absolutely hates discussing in public. You know what the moon is? It's the ultimate surveillance platform. From the lunar surface, you have an unobstructed view of Earth and everything in between. Every satellite, every space station, every military asset, commercial system, GPS network, all of it visible, all of it trackable. Modern civilization runs on satellites. Your phone? Satellites. Your GPS? Satellites. Banking transactions, weather forecasts, military communications, satellites, satellites, satellites. Now imagine someone parks themselves on the moon with the ability to monitor, track, or interfere with all of that. Because that's not science fiction, that's current technology. The US military is absolutely thinking about this. They have to be. The Space Force wasn't created as a meme, it was created because space is now a contested military domain, and the moon is the high ground in that domain. Here's what's wild. The Outer Space Treaty says you can't put military bases or weapons of mass destruction on the moon. Sounds good, right? Except here's the thing. It doesn't prohibit military personnel from doing research. It doesn't clearly define what counts as a weapon, and it definitely doesn't address dual-use technology. What's dual-use technology? It's stuff that works for both civilian and military purposes. A communications relay? Civilian, until it's jamming enemy signals. A lunar fuel depot? Totally civilian, until it's refueling military spacecraft. A telescope studying stars? Scientific, until it's tracking spy satellites. You see the problem? China's being smart about this. They're not saying, we're militarizing the moon. They're saying, international scientific cooperation, while their lunar program is run by the People's Liberation Army. We're doing the same dance. NASA's civilian, but the Department of Defense is deeply involved in Artemis technology, and Space Force personnel will almost certainly end up on the moon. And look, I'm not trying to be alarmist here, but American defense strategy for 80 years has been about maintaining dominance in every domain: land, sea, air, cyber, and now space. If a rival power establishes a permanent presence on the moon first, that's a strategic problem, not a science problem, not an exploration problem, this could affect American security for the next 100 years problem. That's why there's bipartisan support for this. That's why the money keeps flowing even when Congress can't agree on infrastructure or healthcare. Because both parties understand losing the moon means losing strategic dominance in space, and that's not an option.
Chapter 4. The psychology of being number one.
Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. America's having a bit of an identity crisis. For most of our lives, especially if you're over 30, America was the undisputed tech leader. We invented the internet. We built Silicon Valley. We put 12 guys on the moon while everyone else was still figuring out how to get to orbit. We were number one, and everybody knew it. That's not really true anymore. China's got the world's fastest trains. They're dominating solar panels and electric vehicles. They've got more STEM graduates than we do. They launch more rockets than we do. Their space station is operational while ours is literally falling apart and scheduled for retirement. And Americans are noticing. We're uncomfortable with it. Polls show most Americans think China's either caught up to us technologically or is ahead. That's a big psychological shift. Going back to the moon, and specifically beating China there, is about about reclaiming that feeling. It's about saying, we're still number one. It's about proving American innovation, American engineering, American can-do spirit is still the best in the world. You can hear it in how politicians talk about Artemis. It's never just, we're going to the moon. It's, America will lead humanity back to the moon. American astronauts will be the first to return. We will write the rules for the next era of space exploration. That language isn't accidental. It's about primacy. It's about leadership. It's about not letting China tell the story of the 21st century. And honestly, it's working. Space is one of the only things left that gets bipartisan support. Republicans love it because it's about American dominance and beating China. Democrats love it because it's science, technology, and inspiring the next generation. Everybody wins politically. But more than that, it taps into something deep in the American psyche. We're a nation built on exploration, on pushing boundaries, on being first. The frontier is part of our identity. When Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon," it resonated because it fit who we believed we were. 50 years later, we're trying to recapture that. We're trying to prove to the world and to ourselves that America still has what it takes, that we're not in decline, that the best days are still ahead. Is that rational? Not entirely. Is it good policy? Depends who you ask. But is it powerful? Absolutely.
Final chapter.
And hey, maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need purely noble motivations to do incredible things. The Apollo program was fueled by Cold War rivalry, and it still inspired millions and pushed technology forward in ways we're still benefiting from today. Maybe Artemis will do the same thing. We'll get the science, the inspiration, and the technology breakthroughs, all while securing American interests for the next century. Not a bad deal when you think about it. The question isn't whether we should go back to the moon. At this point, that decision's been made. The question is, what kind of future do we want up there? Because whatever we build in the next 10 years is going to define space for the next 100, and that's a conversation worth having.
Thank you for watching.